What's going on, everyone? It's Bales, and welcome back to another episode of AFL Fantasy Head2Head, where you put two players up against each other to see who will be picking out of them for 2024. This is episode 16 of the series. If you haven't checked out the other 15 episodes, make sure that you do. And yeah, also make sure you leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But we're talking another couple of very relevant players here in terms of defenders. And I've got another legend to join me chatting these two-time top 10 finisher and a member of the PODPOD. We're on a bit of a PODPOD roll at the moment. It is Holmsey, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Bales. Thanks for having me on. I've been enjoying this little series that you're doing, and yeah, looking forward to chatting with you today about Nasiah. I've done a lot of research on Hayden Young and looked at Nasiah a little bit, but it would be good to hear your perspective on why you think he's a worthwhile pick this year.
Yeah, it'd be very, very interesting. And I'm these two players definitely on the watch list, and both have spent time in my side, and we'll get to that. But let's talk about Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera first. So Tim's mate Gavin had a bit of a breakout year last year. So he went from a 59 average in 2022 to average 91.3 last year, but he averaged 97.8 from rounds 10 to 20. So you can already see that being priced at 91.3 this year, there's potentially 6 points of upside already baked into that. Plus, he's obviously entering his third season, so we obviously know about that third-year breakout. I don't think we need to worry about too much attention when it comes to Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera. I think that a lot of that's going to go to Jack Sinclair. He's obviously the main guy back there, whether it be off half-back or even in the midfield. I think if teams are looking to put attention on a player, is going to be going towards Jack Sinclair. Just the one thing that I'm nervous with him is just he's had some of those floor scores, and we saw a couple of those last year. So just going into like some of his lower scores last year, the only worry that I have. So on one hand, he's got a pretty decent ceiling. Like we see some scores, like he had a couple of 125s, a 130 there, which was his career high. So he's got the ceiling to match it with those defenders. It's just a few of those scores where they're a little bit lower. So just for example, I won't read out the first half. Actually, I'll go through the first half. Actually, I was going to say because he was down a bit to start the year, only 100 in his first 6 games, but he scored a 53 against the Crows in round 9, so a lower score there. There's a few 70s there, and then obviously a couple of like a 55 against Carlton, a 66 against Collingwood. So not a few poor scores. We do know defenders can have a bit of a flaw like that. It's these scores essentially from the past the bye onwards. He's like the scores of 118, 130, 125, 103. Some good scores there as well. Even 94 against GWS in that final as well. So his kick-ins, he was second behind Sinclair, but his numbers were fairly healthy throughout the year. Was second behind Sinclair, and I think I'll go to you, Holmesy, for this point here. Is with Sinclair being such a versatile player, he can play on a wing, play in the midfield. How do you see St Kilda's back line going this year? Do you see Sinclair pushing more as that midfield like we did see at points last year, or do you think it'll be a bit of a Sinclair's going to play in defence and Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera will be there? And is that a positive or a negative if Sinclair's back there with him?
Oh, look, Bales, we'd be speculating, but I would think that Ross continues to deploy him in that same role. He's kind of his Mr. Fix that he can play anywhere. We don't want him playing forward, which he hasn't really, but whether it's in defence, whether it's in the midfield, it seems like he's that go-to guy that Ross just will throw around where he needs to. And from a Sinclair point of view, he doesn't need to be anywhere in particular to score. He just gets it done. But yeah, I think if he spends more time in the midfield, that probably is good for Nasiah. But at the same time, I kind of disagree with you a little bit. I think that teams will start to put a little bit more time into him. We've seen players in their second year kind of get away with a little bit more when the comp's kind of starting to understand how they play. But I think it gets a little bit tougher in the third year. And with him being such a good ball user, it wouldn't surprise me if teams start to not lock down on him, but maybe put a bit more time into him and put maybe a bit more of a dangerous forward on him to hold him accountable a bit. So, yeah, look, he's a fantastic player. I'm a little bit skeptical about how much growth he has in his third year. We just have to look to the player that we're actually talking about in this podcast, Hayden Young, who was in a similar boat. He didn't average 91, but I think it was high 80s, and we all thought there was going to be that natural progression and he'd go on his merry way, but he just kind of stagnated because we know it's pretty hard for defenders to average above 90, especially if they've got, Hayden Young had a Luke Ryan taking up ball back there and even a Jordan Clark on his day. And that's kind of similar with St Kilda as well with Jack Sinclair. So can't argue with the numbers there, and he definitely averaged more post-bye and came home strong, but I'm still a little bit tentative on whether he could do that for a full year, especially with Jack Sinclair.
Yeah, and we've seen players have good second halves of the year, and then the following year that just doesn't eventuate. It just happened that they were just in good form and sort of a bit like the hot hand. He just kept getting the ball, and I think I can't remember who came up with the stat, but he's averaged the most points in this. Someone of their second year didn't attend a centre bounce, so it just shows really how good of a year he did have last year. So, as you say, maybe teams look at that and go, he got away from us in the back half of last year. Jack Sinclair can sometimes be a bit more difficult to tag because he can just sort of roll around the back and get those cheap possessions, and he's just a really good player. So maybe they do lock down on Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera this year. And the one thing that, again, another sort of point, I'm always talking a bit more negatively about Nasiah, is that his opening run, I talked about it a little bit with Flanders on the episode with DC. If you guys haven't checked that episode out, make sure that you do. But he's got a bit of a mixed run, Holmes. I'd like to get your thoughts on what you think of this run here. So he's got Geelong down in Geelong. I know Geelong aren't what they were even like a couple of years ago, but I think they'll still be tough to score on. Collingwood at the MCG, Essendon at Marvel. Then he's got Richmond at Norwood, which Norwood we saw last year. There's some bad scores, especially from those halfback flangers. I remember watching Whitfield there, and he just didn't get involved in the game, just with the ground being just such a weird shaped ground. Then he's got Giants at Manuka Oval, Dogs at Marvel, which will be good. But then he's got Port Adelaide, Adelaide Oval, North Melbourne at Marvel, which will be fine. Hawthorn at UTAS. So a bit of a mixed bag there. What do you make of that sort of opening run? Is there a few games there that make you sort of think, yeah, with your concerns potentially of the upside, maybe you're steering clear? Or do you think that maybe probably not read too much into it and see how everything unfolds in the preseason?
Yeah, look, you definitely have to look into it. I think the main thing that sticks out there in the first 8 games is that there's only 2 games at Marvel Stadium. And it seemed, I think it was DC put out the stat on Twitter that the St Kilda players all averaged significantly more at Marvel last year compared to when they were playing away. So that might be something to look at as well. Conveniently, they didn't start off too many games at Marvel last year, and then I think they only left Marvel Stadium once or twice after their bye. So maybe that had something to do with his scoring. I know Jaden Popowski has been big on Twitter pretty recently saying that venue doesn't really play too much of a role in what he's kind of looked at with his stats. But yeah, look, with the home ground advantage that they have in playing under the roof, I think there might be something there with Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera. So yeah, that opening run would kind of scare me off a little bit, just knowing that they're not playing at Marvel too much.
Yeah, and funny enough, you mentioned that stat about Marvel Stadium. St Kilda post their round 15 bye this upcoming year. They only play once outside of Marvel Stadium, which is against the Crows in round 18. But you got Port, Sydney at Marvel, then you got West Coast, Essendon, Brisbane, Richmond, Geelong, and Carlton all at Marvel Stadium. So pretty crazy to think. So maybe he could potentially be that guy that we look at if he goes well. Maybe around that mid-season bye, we look to jump on him with all those Marvel games coming up. So yeah, a lot of interesting points with Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera. But we will move across to the other side of this battle and talk about Hayden Young. Holmes, obviously one of your boys at Freo. Why should people be keen on starting Hayden Young in 2024?
Yeah, look, I'm kind of glad you got me on here to talk about Hayden Young. Just to be honest, in terms of a preseason pick, he's almost as much of a slam dunk pick as we're going to get at this point in the preseason. In years gone by, we've always looked for those midfielders, so players that are playing in the AFL in the midfield, but come in with defender status. So I think Callum Mills, Jordan Dawson's, Rory Laird's, even Sam Doherty was purely back, but he started to get mid time as well when he had defender status. And yeah, we do have some defenders like Sicily and Dacos when he was playing in defence, scoring big numbers. But generally, we like the midfielders that are around the ball, and that's exactly what happened to Hayden Young in the back end of last year. So the last 5 games, Freo decided to move the magnets around. They chucked him into the midfield, and in his last 5 games, he was playing that sort of defensive midfielder role, and he averaged 98. So moving forward, all of the word out of Freo this year has been very positive that he's a full-time midfielder now. That's the role they intend him to play. And yeah, he adds something different to that Freo midfield. I'm not gonna say he's Jordan Dawson, but he's definitely in that mold of a bigger bodied player who tackles hard. He's got a very good left foot kick, and yeah, Freo have big plans for him, I would think. And I don't know exactly what he's going to average. It's pretty tough if you expect Brayshaw and Sarong to be around that 110 mark again like they were last year. Then there's only going to be so much ball to go around. But yeah, there's no reason why Hayden Young can't go at that sort of 98 mark that he went in the back end of last year. We did actually see Caleb Sarong drop a little bit in that time with Hayden Young getting a little bit more inside ball and getting those tackles. So yeah, at this stage of the preseason, I'm pretty happy to have. Well, he's in my side, and I can't see that changing at the moment.
Yeah, he's in my side as well, and I'm pretty bullish on what he can do this year. So you obviously mentioned about Brayshaw and Sarong there. So talk to me about what you expect that midfield sort of to look like. You've got there's a lot of names sort of being thrown there. You obviously got Brayshaw and Sarong are going to be there, but then we've heard about Fife training in the midfield. We've heard Matt Johnson's obviously turning a lot of heads at Freo and looking like a really promising player. Obviously, Will Brodie, he's on the out at the moment, but who knows? You got O'Meara there as well. I expect maybe a Switkowski potentially to get a couple of CBAs here and there, just add a bit something different in there. So, how do you see that sort of working with Freo? Is it preseason watch, or do you have a sort of fair idea maybe of what could happen?
Yeah, look, it's like all teams. It's definitely a preseason watch. We don't exactly know how it's going to line up, but I kind of think it's going to compare pretty close to Adelaide's midfield. I think Adelaide have the big three in Dawson, Laird, and Crouch. Well, in the back end of the year, and then they had some other guys just going through there. And I kind of predict that that's what Freo is going to look like this year. Long Muir is coming into his last year of his contract. He's essentially coaching for his life. They've come off the back of a pretty disappointing season last year, and he's not mucking around. So I think it's going to be Brayshaw, Sarong, and Young as the big three in there. And Freo have been pretty vocal that Nat Fife's going to be back in there, and I'd expect him to be in there, sort of 40 to 50% with, the others just floating in there, and your Johnsons, maybe Erasmus if he gets a game, and even Switkowski wasn't a bad shout from you there. But yeah, those big three, and I'm pretty sure that's how the fantasy scoring is going to go as well. But he's so good on the inside, Hayden Young. We've only seen it for 5 games, but he's been a classy player from the moment he stepped into that team, and he's big in their plan. So I'm very comfortable that he's going to be in there a fair amount.
Yeah, you said the comparison at Dawson before, and I know he is obviously they're a little bit different, but they do remind me in a sense that when, especially Dawson, obviously myself being a Crows fan, when he came over from Sydney, I'd sort of thought, yep, he's going to be a halfback guy, that general back there, so controlling everything. And when he went to midfield, like he showed this like the grunt that I didn't really expect to see from him, like really sort of tough inside, getting those tough tackles, and obviously now he's the captain as well. And Young reminded me a little bit of that. I know he's always been a pretty good contested opponent in terms of being a defender, but seeing him sort of lay all those tackles, really getting in and under and getting those contested possessions, that it pleasantly surprised me. And I'm sure that yourself as a Freo fan, that would have been something as well good to see. And also mixed with the fact he's such a good outside player as well. He looks really, really good. But sort of in terms of the averages, obviously, I'm sort of thinking maybe Brayshaw pushes closer towards that 115. Maybe Sarong takes a bit more of a haircut from 100 to 105, and Young goes somewhere around that 95 mark, maybe push to 100. Do you see that being something similar there? Do you see it maybe a little bit different? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, just speculating, I wouldn't have thought that, with those three being as good as they are, very rarely do we see teams with 2 players averaging over 110. I mean, you look at Adelaide, you had Dawson go 112, 113, and then you had Laird at 109. And even when Crouch came in at the back end of the year, he went at 98. You had the Bulldogs, Tim English go 117, who was playing more of a midfield role anyway, and Bont was big. But outside of that, other than maybe a Merritt and a Parrish, there's not generally 2 midfielders that can go above 110 in the same side. And if you throw a third midfielder in there as well, there's even less ball to go around. So I probably have Brayshaw around that sort of 110 mark. He might even find himself kind of rotating out on the wing a little bit more this year.
Yeah.
Not because they don't like him in the inside, but he kind of fits in that mold where he can get it on the inside or he can get it on the outside. He's more of a value out there. So it wouldn't surprise me if he spends just a little bit more time out there, and that allows Sarong, Young, and even a Fife at times to go to work on the inside to get it out to him on the outside. I think Sarong will be about where he is. Maybe a slight regression. He averaged 32 possessions last year. He's not a high mark player, so maybe that drops a little bit. And Young will be anywhere between 95 to 100, but I think it'll land closer to that 97, 98, which from that 90 price tag, that'll be close enough to top 6, and that's someone we've got at value that we can lock away for the year.
Yep, and as you mentioned as well, the fact he's going to be playing midfield, we want those defenders playing midfield, and if you can get that to bonus, especially being priced at 90, and the fact he can hit all the stat lines as well. We saw last year he can tackle, he can obviously get every marks every now and again. So if we can hit all the stat lines and up that disposals to 25 plus disposals, then yeah, we're looking at potentially around that 100 or just a little bit less or a little bit more. So will be very interesting.
That's his role, right? Like he was doing jobs last year. So when he came into the midfield, they played Geelong. He did the job on Dangerfield. He did a job on Neil. He did a job on Rosie. And it's not like he's not following him around the ground all the time and damaging his own game. He'll get them at the stoppage, which opens up plenty of opportunity for tackles. But then he's so good in transition as well that they still look to get in the ball during play. So he's essentially one of those perfect fantasy players for us, and hopefully he can show it.
Yeah, that you're saying that, and I was just thinking about like someone like Josh Dunkley. Well, we've seen that he sometimes follows people to stoppage, and then he gets involved in that transitional play. So hopefully we can see a good season from Hayden Young. I tell you what, imagine if he went 110 or something like that and be like that, sort of like an Errol Gordon from last year, and be that absolutely smash pick. So, but the time has come to sort of pick between these two. I think that more often not we know, but I think we're pretty sure we know. But Holmesy, who are you picking between Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera and Hayden Young for 2024?
Yeah, so I've got Young at the moment. Nasiah, I think he spent about maybe half a day in my team where I just kind of played around with it. But I just think I bank on Sinclair being pretty good. I think Jack Steele's going to have a little bit of a fight back, and they've recruited Liam Henry as well. I think Saints potentially are going to try and play a little bit quicker this year. We look at it a little bit, but in terms of their overall fantasy points, they were, I think, 80 points a game better than the next best side, and that's just so far out of the normal. So I think another year under Ross, they might come back a little bit, which means that potentially Nasiah just is what he is, which he's a fantastic player, but I just don't think there's going to be enough growth on his price to start at this stage.
Yeah, I agree. I think I've got Young as well. I was pretty keen on Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera at the beginning of the preseason when I had him my side. It's funny, my defensive change field, I had him and Sheasel, but sort of just with those two, just sort of more I've looked into numbers and just hearing some things. I'm not as keen on either, but that's definitely not saying that they're not in the mix. If I see something in preseason that looks good, then potentially. But yeah, at the moment, Young's locked in. It's just whether I pick Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera at D2 or if I go for another player. Because yeah, I just think Hayden Young, as you said, you need to pick these guys these slam dunk picks, and Hayden Young looks everything of that, and we'll obviously get to have a look at him in the preseason. Yeah, I think it was what Nathan Schmooks was saying on the Traders pod early in the week. He said that Hayden Young essentially has not looked at halfback at all. He's been full midfield, and that's even just more confidence. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do this season. But that will conclude another episode of AFL Fantasy Head. The good thing is those two players don't have early buys either. So, and actually, that's probably another good thing as well with Young. Probably didn't quite touch on as much, but he has got that round 13 buy, which is as helpful as well. But yeah, if you did enjoy the video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel as we try to head to 2,000 subscribers. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below on Hayden Young and Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera if you've got either on your side. Let us know your thoughts and any other questions that I put them in the comments below there. But Holmesy, mate, thank you very much for jumping on. I know you're a busy man. Appreciate you jumping on for a chat here. Where can the people find you across socials, and what can people be expecting from the PodPod in 2024?
Yeah, so jump over to PodPod AFL on X. We're doing some good things over there. Not exactly sure where we're going to go with this season. Obviously, we got the podcast every week, and we've got a really good bunch of guys on there. We all offer a different perspective, and most of us, other than Doss, have all been there before. So it's good to talk from a bit of experience as well. But who knows? We might have some big things planned. I like doing these one-on-one interviews. I recorded one with Stevie Fizz last night, which will be out soon, which was a good one. And yeah, looking forward to deep diving more with some good coaches as we come towards a fantasy season that we haven't seen before, which is super exciting.
Yeah, and the one I enjoyed a lot, and I enjoy all the stuff pop up, but that one that you did with DT Lemon, I think it was the beginning of January or whatever. So, and that's still very, very relevant. So, if people haven't listened to that, I'm sure all you guys have, but if you haven't, make sure you check it because it's getting a lot of insight from two great coaches is fantastic. So, make sure you get around that, and also get around the PodPod channel on YouTube as well. That's a new one on there, which is good to see. You boys doing some video content and getting all that stuff, and I do like the intro music that you guys have got with the team previews. That's is good as well from Checkers there. But fantastic work. You can find me at BailsDT on Twitter and Instagram as well. And obviously, as I said, like and subscribe across here. And if you're listening to this as the podcast, appreciate you listening there as well. 5-star rating review would be very much appreciated. We might even read some of those reviews out in the pre-season, me and Tim, throughout some podcasts. So make sure you guys get around that. But in the next episode, got another special guest. Again, the duo hasn't quite been locked in yet, but we will be talking about a couple of very relevant players. Again, all these players are relevant. And again, another fantastic special guest to jump on and chat some more relevant players. So thanks, Holmes, again for jumping on. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode. So we're out. Cheers.
Cheers.